My name is Liam. I'm 20 years old, and my life has always been a storm I couldn't escape. My parents' voices were never soft. Every night, their arguments rattled the thin walls of our cramped apartment. Money was something we heard about more than we actually saw. And as for me, well, I never had much of a choice. I fell in with Maya and Ethan when we were barely teenagers. They weren't saints, neither was I. We weren't violent, but we were desperate, and desperation makes you creative. We ran small scams, lifted wallets, pawned whatever we could find. It was survival, not pride. Still, there was a dream that kept us going, to leave this place behind. We pictured ourselves in a house by the ocean, where the air smelled like salt and the nights were quiet. No cops, no debts, no angry voices behind thin walls. Just peace. We kept telling ourselves we only needed one big score. And one night, it found us dead. It was Maya who brought the rumor to us. We were sitting in Ethan's apartment, the air smelling faintly of cigarette smoke and cheap beer. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You know Mr. Whitman? The old guy who lives in that creepy Victorian out by the woods. Ethan rolled his eyes. Yeah, the one who looks like he's been dead for a decade, but just hasn't realized it yet. Yeah, him. Maya glanced toward the window, as if afraid someone might overhear. I heard from Josh, the guy who does odd jobs around the neighborhood, that Whitman got some huge payout years ago after his daughter died. Like hundreds of thousands. He never put it in the bank. Keeps in the house. That caught my attention. How would Josh know that? She smirked. Because he saw him once with a wad of cash, so big it barely fit in his hand. And he might have overheard him talking about a safe. Ethan chuckled darkly. So what? We break in, grab the cash, and retire? That's the idea, Maya said, her eyes glinting in the dim light. No neighbors for miles. No one to hear us. Just in and out. I leaned back, thinking. We'd done plenty of jobs before, but nothing like this. This wasn't stealing a few $100 or some electronics. This was the kind of haul that could actually change our lives. Ethan must have read my mind. One last job, Liam. Then we're gone. I looked between them. We have to be careful. If we get caught, we won't. Maya interrupted. We'll pick a night when he's asleep. We're in and out before he even knows we were there. I hesitated for another moment, but the thought of leaving this town behind, for good, was too tempting. All right, I said finally. Let's do it. The plan was simple. 2 nights from now, when the weather was forecasted to be calm and moonless, we'd head out to the Whitman house. Ethan would pick the locks, Maya would search the study for the safe, and I'd keep watch. As we parted ways that night, none of us said it out loud, but we all felt it. This was more than just another job. This was our shot at freedom. And if we'd known what was really waiting for us inside that house, we might have run in the opposite direction. The night we picked felt heavier than most. The sky was a thick sheet of black. No moon, no stars, only the occasional glint of a distant street lamp far from where we were headed. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and decaying leaves. We didn't speak much as we walked down the overgrown path that led to Whitman's place. The crunch of gravel under our shoes sounded too loud, like the house might hear us coming. From a distance, the place looked like a shadow carved out of the night. A hulking, 3-story Victorian with peeling paint and dark, blank windows. I told you, Ethan muttered, adjusting the strap of his backpack. Place looks like it's been empty for decades. Then let's hope it's as empty inside, Maya said. Though her voice carried a tremor she probably didn't want me to hear. We reached the porch. The wooden steps groaned under our weight, the sound loud enough to make my stomach clench. Ethan knelt by the front door, pulling a small black case from his bag. I kept my eyes on the tree line, the stillness around us pressing in. The lock gave way in seconds. Too easy, Ethan whispered with a smirk. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not just dust, but something metallic, almost like rust or dried blood. The hallway stretched out ahead, lined with tall doors and fading wallpaper that curled at the edges. Maya moved first, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The furniture was old but intact, draped in white sheets that sagged like ghostly skin. Everything felt preserved, like the house hadn't been abandoned so much as left waiting. We kept our voices low. Study's on the second floor, Maya murmured. We'll head up, get the cash, and be out in 10. The staircase creaked with every step, but nothing stirred. On the landing, we found the door to the study. Ethan went straight to work on the safe while I lingered near the hall, keeping an ear out. That's when I heard it. At first, it was faint, just the suggestion of sound over the silence. Then it grew clearer, slow, deliberate footsteps somewhere in the house. They weren't rushed, and they weren't far. I froze. Guys, I whispered, but they didn't look up. The footsteps stopped. The air felt heavier, thicker, like the house was holding its breath. Then, from the far end of the hallway, a shadow flickered, tall, human-shaped, and gone as soon as I blinked. Liam. Maya's voice was barely audible. I swallowed hard. We're not alone. Ethan muttered a curse under his breath, but kept turning the safe's dial. Probably just the house settling, he said, though his hands moved faster now. The click of the lock opening was almost drowned out by the sound of my own heartbeat. We all leaned in, expecting stacks of bills or gold jewelry. Instead, what the hell? Maya whispered. The safe was filled with books, not the kind you'd find on a dusty shelf, but small, leather-bound journals. Their covers were cracked and worn, the pages yellowed and brittle. I pulled one out and flipped it open. The handwriting was delicate but shaky, looping across the page in uneven lines. November 4th. Father says the whispers are getting louder. I hear them at night, too, in the walls, in the pipes, sometimes under the bed. He says I must write them down so we can remember their words. I kept reading, my stomach tightening with each entry. The writer, a young girl, Whitman's daughter, described strange rituals, circles drawn in chalk on the floor, bowls of salt, and candles left burning until they melted into puddles of wax. She mentioned the collection over and over, but never explained what it was. In the margins were drawings, intricate patterns, like symbols, and crude sketches of people with empty circles where their faces should be. This is messed up, Maya said, rifling through another journal. These go back years. Look at this. She talks about experiments. Ethan frowned, leaning against the desk. Experiments on who? Before I could answer, a new sound rose from the silence, a low creak, like weight shifting on the floorboards, coming from somewhere above us. We froze, listening. Another creak, then another. Someone was moving upstairs, slow and steady, as if they knew exactly where we were. I put the journal back, my hands trembling slightly. We need to go. Now. Ethan shook his head. We've barely looked. The footsteps stopped, and then, from the hallway, a whisper curled through the air, so faint I thought I imagined it. Liam. Every muscle in my body locked. Then it came again. Maya. Ethan. The voice was deep, almost gentle, but there was something wrong about it, like it wasn't coming from a human throat at all. Ethan dropped his lockpick tools, and the metallic clink echoed far too loudly. We all turned toward the doorway. That's when we saw him. Mr. Whitman stood at the far end of the hall, his face hidden in shadow, his posture unervingly still. His head tilted slightly, like he'd been waiting for us to notice him. None of us moved. The old man didn't either. He just stood there, his outline framed by the faint light from a grimy window behind him. Mr. Whitman? Maya's voice cracked, the name barely leaving her lips. He didn't answer. His head tilted further, unnatural, almost bird-like. Then, without a word, he stepped back and vanished into the darkness of the hallway. I lunged for the journals, shoving one into my jacket pocket without even thinking. We're leaving. Now. We hurried out of the study, but the hallway looked different. The wallpaper seemed darker, the floorboards longer, stretching in a way that made no sense. We should have reached the stairs in seconds, but with every step, the landing seemed farther away. Are we? Ethan started, but then the lights flickered violently, plunging us into strobing flashes of light and shadow. That's when the whispers started again. Not one voice now, dozens. They crawled over each other, hissing, chanting, murmuring words I didn't understand. But between them I caught our names again, over and over. Don't stop moving, Maya shouted, her voice swallowed by the cacophony. We ran, but the doors we passed were wrong. A dining room where there should have been a bedroom. a narrow corridor that ended in a brick wall. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest. Then, without warning, one of the doors beside us slammed shut on its own. Another creaked open just enough for me to glimpse something inside. A dark, human-shaped figure standing perfectly still, its head tilted the same way Whitman's had been. "Don't look," I gasped, shoving past Maya. Somewhere ahead, the sound of footsteps returned. Not slow anymore, but fast pursuing. Ethan yanked open the nearest door, and we stumbled inside. It was a parlor, the air thick with the smell of mildew. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the door slammed behind us. The lights flickered once more, and when they steadied, Whitman was in the room with us. He was closer now, close enough for me to see his eyes, dark, glassy, and reflecting the dim light like polished stones. "I've been waiting," he said, his voice almost kind. "You're just in time." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and final. None of us moved. Whitman didn't blink, didn't breathe, just kept staring like we were specimens in a jar. "What do you want?" Maya demanded, her voice shaking despite her attempt to sound defiant. He smiled faintly. "It's not about what I want. It's about what it wants." Before I could ask what he meant, the lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, thick as tar. I heard the scrape of something against the floor. A shuffle. A breath that wasn't ours. Then, in the black, a sudden burst of movement. A hand brushed my shoulder, and I shoved back instinctively. "Run!" Ethan shouted. We bolted toward where the door should have been, but my hands hit only wall. My fingers scrambled over the surface, searching for a handle that wasn't there anymore. The room had changed again. From behind us came a low, guttural laugh. Not Whitman's. Deeper. Hungrier. I kicked over a chair, hearing it splinter in the dark, and my hand finally found a doorway. Not the one we'd come through, but it didn't matter. We plunged through it into another hallway. This one was narrow, the wallpaper peeling away in strips. The floor tilted slightly under our feet, as though the house itself was leaning toward us. The whispers followed, but now they were accompanied by a sound I can only describe as breathing walls. Every few feet, a shadow darted just out of sight. Too fast to catch, too close to ignore. We turned a corner and found ourselves in a room lit only by the glow of a single lamp on the floor. Its cord trailed off into the darkness. Ethan slammed the door behind us and leaned against it, gasping for air. "This place is a maze." "It's worse than that," Maya said, her eyes darting to the corners. "It's changing. It's keeping us here." I pulled the journal from my jacket, flipping to a random page. There, in hurried, uneven handwriting, was a passage that made my blood run cold. "Once the house learns your names, you belong to it." The door behind Ethan shuddered, as if something massive had just thrown itself against it. A second hit. The hinges groaned. "Time to move," I said, my voice barely steady. The third blow knocked the door clean off its frame. What stepped inside wasn't Whitman. It was taller, broader, its head brushing the ceiling. Its face was wrong, stretched too far, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It didn't walk toward us. It glided, and when it opened its mouth, I realized the whispers had only been its breathing. The thing slid forward, each movement impossibly smooth, its limbs bending at angles they shouldn't. The three of us backed away until my heel struck the lamp. The light toppled, plunging the room into near darkness. "Go!" I yelled, and we tore through the opposite door. The hallway we entered was colder, the air damp like we'd stepped underground, except we were still on the main floor. The walls here were bare wood, and they groaned with every step we took, as though the house itself was aware of our weight. Behind us, there was no sound of footsteps, just the slow, dragging scrape of something following. We ran, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. Door after door was locked, or worse, opened into brick walls. Then, ahead, a staircase appeared, leading downward into blackness. "I'm not going down there," Maya said, her voice trembling. "Do you see any other choice?" Ethan snapped, already moving. I hesitated, but a faint sound drifted toward us from the hallway behind. A wet, gurgling inhale, followed by a whisper that seemed to slither right into my ear. "Liam." We went down. The stairs were steep and uneven, each step groaning under our weight. Halfway down, the air grew colder, sharp with the smell of rust and something organic. Meat left too long in the open. At the bottom, the space widened into a basement that wasn't like any basement I'd ever seen. The walls were lined with shelves, but instead of tools or boxes, they held things. Figures. Dozens of them. They were human-shaped but stiff, their skin pale and waxy. Some were clothes from decades past. Their eyes were glassy, unblinking, and in the dim light, I saw faint seams at their joints, like they'd been taken apart and put back together. "What the hell?" Maya whispered. A faint mechanical hum filled the air, coming from deeper in the room. In the corner, a row of figures sat in chairs, their heads tilted, their arms moving slowly, mimicking our every motion. When Ethan stepped forward, one of them leaned forward the exact same way. "I think," Ethan said slowly, "these were people." Something creaked above us, a heavy, deliberate step. Then another. Whitman's voice floated down the stairs, calm, almost cheerful. "Now you see what I've kept safe all these years." The hum grew louder. The mannequin's movements became sharper, faster, and in the dim light, I could swear I saw one of them smile. We began backing toward the stairs, but as soon as we did, the row of mannequins blocking the far wall all turned their heads toward us in perfect unison. The sound of their neck joints cracking filled the air like snapping twigs. "Don't move," I whispered, though my own voice was shaking. One of them, a woman in a faded yellow dress, slowly stood. Her legs moved stiffly, but with each step they became looser, more fluid, until she walked exactly like a person. The others followed, their glassy eyes fixed on us. Ethan grabbed my arm. "We have to." Slam. The stairwell door above shut with a force that made the floor vibrate. Whitman's voice drifted down again, casual as a man speaking to dinner guests. "Do you know what happens when a house learns your names?" Maya's breathing was fast, panicked. "He's playing with us." "No," Whitman said almost gently. "It's welcoming you." The figures began to spread out, moving in a slow arc to box us in. The hum in the air deepened into something almost like a heartbeat, and the walls seemed to press closer. I noticed then that the mannequins weren't just mimicking us anymore. Their faces, pale, featureless at first, were beginning to change. Skin stretched, molded, until faint outlines appeared. Eyebrows, noses, lips, my lips, Maya's cheekbones, Ethan's eyes. "They're becoming us," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The first of them reached out a hand, the fingers curling in a way that was almost pleading. The second's jaw began to move, and in a warped, wet voice, it said, "Liam." Ethan grabbed a rusted pipe from a nearby workbench. "Stay back," he shouted, swinging it. The blow connected with a dull thunk, but the mannequin didn't fall. It only tilted its head, as if curious, then lunged. We scattered. The basement felt endless now, filled with shelves and shadowed corners. I could hear the mannequins moving, not fast, but steady, relentless. Somewhere behind me, Whitman's voice came again, lower now, almost tender. "Don't fight. The house doesn't like it when you fight." And then I realized the real horror. The basement wasn't just under the house. It was the house, a living, breathing part of it. And now it was closing in. We pushed deeper into the basement, weaving between rusted metal shelving and stacks of boxes, so old the cardboard had fused with the damp floor. The mannequins followed in that same steady, unhurried pace, like they knew there was nowhere for us to go. Then the floor shifted. It wasn't my imagination. The boards under my feet rose and sank like waves. A groan rolled through the air, not from wood but from something alive. Maya stumbled. "It's moving," she said, her voice trembling. "No," Ethan said, eyes wide. "It's breathing." The hum in the walls deepened to a pulse. The shelves to our left shuddered, and with a sickening screech, they scraped across the floor, cutting off the way we'd come. Behind them, a section of the wall simply folded in on itself, vanishing into black. From that darkness came the sound of shuffling feet. More of them. I grabbed Maya's arm. "We need to find another way up." We ran toward what looked like an old service door. When Ethan tried the handle, it burned his hand. He yanked back, cursing. The mannequins were closer now. Some still had waxy, incomplete faces, but others looked finished. I saw my own mouth on one, curved into a strange, calm smile. Whitman's voice was all around us now, coming from the walls themselves. Once the house knows you, it will remember you forever. The service door burst open, but instead of another basement room, a narrow stairwell rose sharply into darkness. The steps were crooked, too steep, but it was our only chance. We climbed fast, the mannequins clattering after us, their movements jerky and wrong. The stairs wound upward in tight circles, the air growing warmer, the walls damp and slick to the touch. When we finally reached the top, we expected the first floor. Instead, we stepped into a hallway I didn't recognize, narrower than any we'd seen, the ceiling sloping low. The wallpaper here was fresh, the carpet clean, but there were no doors. Just a single, long corridor that seemed to stretch forever. Maya whispered, "We're not supposed to be here." From behind us, the stairwell vanished. Not closed, gone, as if it had never existed. Then, ahead, a light flickered on, and standing under it was Whitman. But something about him was wrong. His shadow on the wall wasn't a shape at all. It was taller, distorted, its head brushing the ceiling. And when he spoke, the words came from both him and the shadow. "You've been in my house long enough," he said. "Now you're part of it." Whitman took a step forward, and the shadow detached from him. It slid along the wall like liquid, its limbs too long, its head turning in unnatural, bird-like jerks. We backed away, but the hallway itself seemed to resist us. The carpet rippled under our feet like water, slowing every movement. Maya's eyes darted to my jacket. The journal. "Liam, give it to me." I pulled it out, hands trembling, and she flipped through the pages in a blur. "Here," she said, stopping on an entry marked with a black smudge. The writing was frantic, the ink blotted. "If you burn the heart, the house will forget." Ethan frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means we find whatever it's calling the heart, and we burn it," Maya said. Whitman tilted his head. You've read my daughter's stories." "Stories?" I said, my voice shaking. "This is real." He smiled faintly. "Reality is just the story the house tells you. And right now, it's telling you to stay." The shadow slid forward, separating us from him. The air grew thick, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. The lights above flickered, and for a moment, I saw what lay beneath the wallpaper, pulsing, vein-like lines running through the walls, glowing faintly with a dull red light. "The heartbeat. That's it," I whispered. "The heart is the house." Ethan's grip tightened on the rusted pipe he'd been carrying since the basement. "Then we find a source." The floor shifted under us, tilting slightly, pushing us toward Whitman. He didn't move to grab us. He didn't need to. The hallway was doing it for him. Maya suddenly grabbed my arm and pointed to a narrow seam in the wall just ahead. There, a service hatch. We threw ourselves at it, forcing it open. Behind it, a cramped crawl space stretched into darkness, the red glow stronger inside. The sound of the heartbeat was louder now, shaking through the wood. As we crawled in, Whitman's voice followed, calm and certain. "You can't kill my house," he said, "because once you've been inside, it lives in you." We didn't look back. The passage narrowed until we had to crawl on our bellies, the glow ahead pulsing faster, brighter. When we emerged into the chamber, it wasn't a room at all. It was more like the inside of something alive. The walls were slick, warm to the touch, the red light radiating from a knot of twisted roots in the center, pulsing like a massive heart. Ethan raised the pipe. "Let's end this." The heart pulsed, brighter and hotter with every beat. Its rhythmic throb filled the chamber, vibrating through our bones. The air was thick with heat and a metallic tang of blood, though nothing was bleeding. "This is it," Maya whispered. "We destroy it, or we die here." Ethan swung the rusted pipe with all his strength, but it barely left a dent in the mass of twisted roots. I ripped a lighter and held the flame to the nearest dry tendril. It hissed and sizzled, curling away like it was alive, but the glow didn't dim. It shimmered, reacting to the flame as if aware. The house itself seemed to react. The walls twisted, breathing like lungs, and the heartbeat accelerated, pounding so loudly it threatened to burst our eardrums. Shadows stretched from every corner, wrapping around the roots, trying to smother the flame. "Keep going," I yelled. Maya grabbed a pile of old papers from the corner, the journals, and set them ablaze. The fire caught quickly, flames hungrily licking at the roots. The red glow faltered for a moment, then exploded into a blinding light. The floor lurched beneath us. The walls groaned, shifting, cracking. The shadow figures that had followed us thrashed violently, their bodies melting back into the wood and wallpaper, leaving behind only echoes of whispers. Whitman's voice screamed, mingled with the sound of splitting wood. "No, this isn't how it ends." The chamber shook violently, and we tumbled toward the nearest exit, a small, jagged hole that hadn't been there before, probably created by the fire. We crawled through it blindly, smoke stinging our eyes, coughing, burning, but driven by pure adrenaline. We emerged into the front yard, just as the first tendrils of dawn broke over the horizon. The house loomed behind us, blackened and twisted, but silent now. The pulse was gone. The whispers had vanished. We collapsed onto the damp grass, gasping for air. I think it's over," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. Maya shook her head slowly, staring at the ruined house. "For now, but it's not gone. It's never really gone." I didn't argue. I had felt it deep in my bones. Part of that house had imprinted itself on us, recorded us like it recorded everything that entered. We had escaped with our lives, but we weren't the same. We stayed there until the sun rose fully, painting the world in gold and washing away the blackness of the night. The nightmare was behind us, at least for now. But in the quiet moments, when the wind whistled through the trees, I could still hear a faint heartbeat, echoing somewhere far away, waiting. And I knew, with a chill, that someday it would call again.